What's going on, guys? Farah Hanoun here, aka UFC News Alerts, here to preview UFC 225 as well as answer all your questions. Let's get to it. Fantastic card coming up this weekend, headlined by Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero 2, and an interim welterweight title fight between Rafael Dos Anjos and Colby Covington, as well as Holly Holm, Megan Anderson, Andrei Arlovsky, Tai Tuivasa, CM Punk, Matt Jackson, Overeem Blades, Gedalia Esparza, Lamas Bektik. What a stacked card. The Fight Pass prelims are insane. It's probably the best Fight Pass prelims we've ever had. It's crazy. Fingers crossed everything goes and fights stay intact and nobody gets injured. It's very rare that we have cards that are untouched A to Z, and I feel like this has to be the card that remains untouched. We'll see. It's always up to the last second, of course, with weigh-ins and all that, but what a fantastic card. Probably the best card of the year so far. Love the card. Name value, great. A fight for everyone, I feel. No matter what you like and who you support in the sport, I feel like there's a fight for everyone in this card. Fight Pass prelims, you get a fight like Joseph Benavidez and Sergio Pettis. Benavidez is top 5 ranked flyweight. I think he's the number 2 ranked flyweight. He's been kind of the number 1 contender for forever. And it's such a high caliber fight. It's crazy for that fight to be in the Fight Pass prelims. Rashad Evans, future Hall of Famer, former champion. He's fighting Anthony Smith. He's in the Fight Pass prelims as well. Clay Guida, Charles Oliveira. That's a late, not a late addition, but a late substitution. Of course, Clay Guida was supposed to fight Bobby Green. In comes Charles Oliveira. So it's still a great fight. That's as good of a replacement as you can expect. A lot of times in these situations, we find newcomers coming in. But this time, to get a quality opponent like Charles Oliveira, Clay Guida's a wrestler. Oliveira's got phenomenal jiu-jitsu. Great fight, great stylistic fight. Oliveira's jiu-jitsu is incredible. He's, in my opinion, top 5 jiu-jitsu players, or for MMA at least. But he's shown a tendency, when he gets hit, he doesn't like it. He always does well. If you go back to every Charles Oliveira fight, he's always doing well. Every fight. And very well. Like, some fights he dominates. Like, you got the Ricardo Lamas fight, a fight that he was dominating. Picked up Lamas, slammed him. Very smooth transitions, threatening with various different submissions, and he ended up getting submitted. Left his head out for the guillotine. Anthony Pettis, that was a back and forth fight when they were both at 45. That was a back and forth fight, and Pettis ended up submitting him in the 3rd round, I believe, with a guillotine as well. But that was a fight where Oliveira had Pettis in some bad spots, and Pettis is a very solid grappler himself, so it's definitely going to be an interesting fight. When Oliveira fought Paul Felder last, I believe, it was a great fight. He was doing well. He had Felder in some very dangerous positions, but again, when he started getting hit by Felder, he didn't like it, and he started to cover up, and Felder got the TKO, and Felder's got brutal ground and pound. But Oliveira, I feel, has the ability to finish anybody, really. His ground game is top level. But as soon as things don't go his way, I don't know if it's a cardio issue, I don't know if he doesn't like getting hit, all of a sudden things completely turn around, and I just feel like he needs to make some adjustments in that sense. Of course, he's struggled to make weight a lot at 45. This fight's at 55. He insists to want to go back to 45. He's been saying that for a while. I don't know why he insists on going back to 45. We've seen it a lot. A lot of fighters want certain weight classes for certain reasons. They get the size advantage, reach advantage, whatever it may be. Everybody's got their reason. But yeah, Oliveira's missed weight pretty badly at featherweight. I think at one point he missed weight by 9 pounds. So definitely want to see him a lightweight just because we want to see the fight. We don't want any weigh-in problems and all that. So this fight's at 55. He is stepping in on short notice, so he should be able to make weight at 55. Not quite sure what his walk-around weight is, but he doesn't look like he's a guy who carries too much fat on his body. But yeah, that's a good fight. Clay Guida, very solid wrestler. He's coming off that great win over Joe Lozon. Quick finish. So this is going to be an action-packed fight. It's going to go to the ground. It's going to be contested on the feet. This could very well be fight of the night. It's a fun fight. Clay Guida's always fun. Oliveira's always dangerous. Great fight. The card opens up with Mike Santiago and Dan Ige. Ige, this is his second fight in the UFC. He lost his first one to Julio Arce. That was a good fight. But, yeah, Mike Santiago, he lost his debut as well, I believe. And this is a hometown fight for Mike Santiago. So I'm glad to see that they got some Chicago natives on this card. You got Ricardo Lamas, who's from Chicago, obviously CM Punk. So always like it when they do that, when they get hometown guys on there. You get to see a loud crowd reaction. I mean, the card is stacked anyway. Lots of great fights, so I feel like the crowd will be riled up anyway. But it's good to see the guys get the hometown cheer. Mike Santiago's coming off a decision loss to Mads Burnell. That's what it is. So yeah, so both guys coming on off a loss, Dan Ige and Mike Santiago. Back-to-back losses for Mike Santiago. I forgot he fought Zabit Magomedsharipov, but no shame in losing to Zabit. He's obviously a phenomenal talent and a rising star. So yeah, Mike Santiago 0-2 for his first two fights. Lost to Zabit Magomedsharipov and Mads Burnell. And now I feel like this is a do-or-die fight for him. It's in his hometown. He's opening the card. So it's good to see that we're going to get a nice crowd reaction from the get-go. I'm sure he's going to have a ton of friends and family there watching him. So definitely a lot of pressure on him. This could be a do-or-die fight for him. Yeah, it's a good matchup. This should be a lot of fun as well. Dan Ige, yeah, coming off a loss to Julio Arce. He showed a lot of heart in that fight. That's another reason why I like this fight, because these guys are so tough. And it's definitely going to be a scrap. Benavidez, Sergio Pettis, another great fight. Obviously, Benavidez hasn't fought in 2 years, I believe. He underwent surgery. He's been out recovering for a while, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any ring rust for him. Sergio Pettis coming off of a loss to Henry Cejudo. That's a fight he really wanted. Stylistically, it wasn't the best fight for Pettis, because we know what Cejudo comes in there to do. Although he's shown vast improvements in striking, people tend to want to take the Pettis brothers down. And Cejudo was able to do that, Olympic level wrestler. And I understand why Sergio would have wanted Cejudo. That's the way to go if you want a title shot. Obviously, Cejudo being one of the top ranked fighters. So I see where Sergio is going with it. And I like that he's going for the top challengers and the tough challenges, because if you want to get to the top, I mean, it's a special case in the flyweight division, because you got a guy in Demetrius Johnson who's cleared out the entire division. So Sergio knows that one solid win and he could be next. There aren't many people ahead of him, not in terms of the rankings, but just because pretty much everybody's had a go at Demetrius, and Sergio's one of those guys that hasn't fought Demetrius yet, so he knows a win over a big name, a top-ranked opponent, will probably get him that title shot. Even Demetrius has spoken about him as a potential opponent in the past, so definitely, should he get a win over Benavidez, he could be the next guy, even though he's coming off of a loss to Cejudo. So, and for Benavidez, it's an important fight, of course, because it's his first fight in a couple of years, and Sergio Pettis is a very solid opponent, very talented striker, good on the ground, very well-rounded. He's not as flashy as Anthony, but I do believe he's a better boxer than Anthony. That's just an opinion, and I believe that Anthony's got the better kicks. But yeah, Sergio is very technical. He's a good striker, and yeah, I expect this fight to be contested on the feet, but I wouldn't be surprised if Benavidez tried to take it to the ground. I mean, that's what most people do with Sergio, just because they believe it's a hole in his game. The inability to stop takedowns, plus he's a solid striker, he's a technical striker, and he knows what he's doing defensively as well, Sergio. He's a talented striker, so if you believe that wrestling is his hole, then that's where they're going to want to take the fight. He's got solid takedown defense, but when he went up against Cejudo, that's an Olympic wrestler, and that grinding pace sometimes can get a little bit frustrating, so we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how Benavidez looks after the super long layoff, but Very important fight in the flyweight division, for sure, because Benavidez has wanted that third crack at Demetrius for so long, but he's kind of put in that hole where you lose twice to the same guy. It's always going to be really, really hard to get a third crack, and nobody's been able to beat Demetrius Johnson, and he's been champion since Benavidez lost him the first and second time. And I don't know what it'll take for Benavidez to get a third crack, but if he racks up a couple more super impressive wins, they can't deny him, especially with Demetrius kind of cleaning out the division. So definitely an important fight for Benavidez if he wants to stay in talks of future title fights or title contention. Rashad Evans and Anthony Smith, that's a light heavyweight fight. I mean, it sucks to see Rashad like this. We all know, I mean, people who followed the sport from before, how good Rashad Evans was. Great fighter, great wrestler, knockout power, former champion, and he's got a list of highlights. And he still wants to fight. It's one of those things where people want to see him retire, but he'll never do it unless he's fully convinced that he's done. And I believe because he's lost 4 in a row now, one of them by the way of knockout. His last 2 he lost by split decision. When you're losing by decision, I don't think that that's 100% convincing for you to step away from the sport. I do believe if his 4 losses in a row were by the way of knockout, I'm pretty sure he would have been thinking about retirement, and his coaches would have probably talked him into retirement. But he lost. Sam Alvey was his last fight. He lost that by split decision. Then it was Daniel Kelly. That was by split decision. Then it was Glover Teixeira that he got knocked out in. And then before that, it was Ryan Bader by unanimous decision. And he dropped down to middleweight for the Dan Kelly fight. Didn't look too great. Stayed in middleweight for Sam Alvey, and now he is going back to light heavyweight for Anthony Smith. Anyways, we don't want to see Rashad go through a tough weight cut at this point in his career. I mean, he's 38 years old, and in the latter part of his career, you don't want to be going through an intense weight cut because 185 to 205, that's a massive difference. There's such a big difference in those 2 weight classes. It's such a massive jump. So at this point in Rashad's career, having kind of a tough weight cut to deal with, coming off of 4 losses in a row, that's not what you want to do at this point in your career. So not quite sure why he ever moved down to middleweight. That's something I felt like he could have done early in his career because he's kind of small for light heavyweight, although he excelled at light heavyweight. But I felt like that was something he could have done before, but not now. Now I just feel you don't want to be dealing with such a massive weight cut. But yeah, he gets Anthony Smith, who's a pretty explosive guy. He's got several wins by knockout. A lot of wins by knockout. Almost half, more than half of his wins are by knockout. So, dangerous fight for Rashad. Interesting matchup. I mean, I would have never, as a matchmaker, gone with that fight. Because Anthony Smith was on a nice 3-fight win streak, all by the way of finish. He was on a roll. He had knocked out Hector Lombard, Andrew Sanchez, and then he lost to Thiago Santos. But yeah, that was a fight of the night, I believe. So he's on quite a roll. I mean, so it's a strange matchmaking, in my opinion. Tough fight for Rashad. But Rashad's been looking tentative and super defensive and not really engaging. We'll see. I expect Anthony Smith to come out super strong and put the pressure on Rashad and try to get him out there quickly. It'll be interesting to see how Rashad reacts to that. It's interesting. I can't really tell you how I see this fight playing out because I could see a quick finish for Anthony Smith, and I could also see Anthony Smith kind of like getting lulled into a slow, technical kind of battle with Rashad, which would favor Rashad, in my opinion, if anything. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. I think a lot of it for Rashad is mental. We all know what he can do. Does he still have it in him? We'll find out. Crazy to see him on Fight Pass, but I love Rashad. I mean, I've been watching Rashad for years. I've always been a fan of Rashad, so I want to see him do well. Win or lose, I want to see him do well. But yeah, that's a fantastic Fight Pass prelims right there. Then the FS1 prelims, try to move on a little faster than this. Rashad Coulter, Chris De La Rocha. That's a heavyweight fight, of course. Rashad Coulter. A lot of people were happy to see him get another opportunity. First couple fights didn't go his way, but he's really exciting. I mean, he showed a ton of heart in that fight with Chase Sherman. I think he gained so much respect from everybody in that fight. I mean, he was wobbling all over the place and showed so much heart. So I think he gained a lot of fans from that performance, despite the fact that he lost. And he fought Tai Tuivasa, who's a killer. I mean, that's a tough fight for anybody. Kind of like when I was talking about Mike Santiago fighting Zabit in his first fight. I mean, that's a tough fight. So I remember when I put the fight announcement of Rashad Coulter, so many people were happy to see him get another chance in the UFC. He's an exciting fighter. And so, yeah, backs against the wall for sure, though. I believe that if he doesn't win this, probably won't get another opportunity in the UFC. So, but this should be a fun fight. I mean, heavyweight fights are always fun. I expect these guys to throw down. Chris De La Rocha is also coming off of 2 losses. He's also never won in the UFC. So matchmaking-wise, this makes perfect sense. He is coming off of a loss to Adam Milstead, I believe. Yes. That was his last fight or his first fight? His last fight, I believe. So yeah, I expect this to be a fun fight. Both guys really, really need the win. And I believe whoever loses is probably not going to get another chance in the UFC. So do or die for both guys. And do or die could either bring the best in you or the worst in you. If it brings the best in you because you want it so bad and you want to show that you belong, or it can bring the worst in you because you're just terrified to lose. It's a heavyweight fight, so these guys throw hard and throw leather, and you know these kind of fights we could see a quick knockout, or we could see 15 minutes of both of them staring at each other. It'll be interesting to see, but this is do or die for both guys. If I'm either one of those guys, I fight my heart out for sure. Ricardo Lamas, Mirsad Bektik. These fights are so good. So good. I'm not used to watching such good fights with such massive implications, a lot on the line and all that, this early. I mean, usually the first couple fights in the card are when you're trying to get yourself into the event, slowly building your way up. I feel like my attention is going to be right away because with Mike Santiago and Dan Ige, both guys backs against the wall. Maybe not so much Dan Ige because he lost his first fight, but in general, both hungry for the win. Rashad Coulter and Chris De La Rocha, same situation. So moving along, Ricardo Lamas and Mirsad Bektik. That's a phenomenal fight. I mean, Ricardo Lamas coming off of that devastating loss to Josh Emmett, and I say devastating because, of course, he was supposed to fight Aldo. Aldo gets pulled out of the fight to fight Max Holloway. They bring in Josh Emmett, who misses weight, and Lamas ends up getting knocked out. So very unfortunate for him. But Ricardo's a fighter. He never really picks and chooses opponents. I respect him for that. He's been in the game for a while and is always down to scrap and always down to fight anybody. So I have a lot of respect for Ricardo. He's super well-rounded. He's tough. He can wrestle. He can strike. He can grapple. He's got good submissions. Very well-rounded fighter. Mirsad Bektik is one of those prospects. Doesn't make a lot of noise in the sense that he's a super quiet guy and you don't really find him on social media. He's not active on social media. You don't find him kind of trash talking or doing any of that stuff. But he's definitely top prospect. As top prospect as they come. And there's a period of time where people were really high on him. And he ended up losing to Darren Elkins in the comeback of the century. A fight that he was dominating, but he kind of got tired and made a mistake. And Elkins, obviously the whole story became about Elkins and his heart and his will and the comeback and all that. And Mirsad was out for a while, and then he comes back and knocks out Godofredo Pepe with a devastating body shot. And I felt like that was a perfect way for him to come back, kind of make a statement and show people he's here. So Ricardo Lamas, I mean, drawing Ricardo Lamas, the fact that they right away put him against a top-ranked opponent shows that they're high on him, and a win over Ricardo Lamas will put him in the top 10, and all of a sudden he's going to emerge as one of the guys that could be a top contender. So super important fight for him. If he wants to take things to the next level, that's the fight. Because Ricardo's a veteran. He's a well-known name and a very talented and tough, well-rounded opponent. And a win over Ricardo is always a good thing. It will always do you good in your career. I mean, after Josh Emmett beat Ricardo, he got a main event fight against Jeremy Stephens on a Fox card. So it's always a big deal to fight and to beat a guy like Ricardo Lamas. And for Ricardo, this is a bounce-back fight. This is a fight to show that he still belongs in the top 10 and he's still a top contender. Ricardo's fought a lot of guys. He's got wins and losses to pretty much everybody in the top 10. I think he's fought Cub Swanson, he's fought Max Holloway, he's fought Chad Mendez, hasn't fought Frankie, hasn't fought Brian Ortega. So it's interesting, the only thing you can do when you're Ricardo Lamas is keep fighting and keep trying to win, and if Ortega becomes champion, if Frankie Edgar becomes champion, those are two names you've never fought. So it'll be interesting. So, of course, at this point for him, a win over Mersad will just keep him in the top of the rankings, and it'll prove to people that he still is one of the best fighters in the world and one of the best fighters in the division. Claudio Gadelha and Carlos Esparza, those two go way back. They were supposed to fight in Invicta, I think twice, and Claudio Gadelha couldn't make it to the fight twice. I think one time she had a weight cut problem, the second time she got injured, I believe. So these guys have long history. Carlos looked good recently. She has that win over Cynthia Calvillo. A lot of people counted Carla out. They didn't think she was going to win that fight. Calvillo was on a roll. And Calvillo is a very solid grappler as well, so they believed that she was going to pose some threats to Carla, and then Carla picked up a very, very solid decision win. So she kind of kept her name in the top of the rankings and showed people that she's still top 10 worthy, and she draws Claudia Gadelha, who has struggled a little bit. Obviously she fought Joanna twice. For the longest time, people believed that she was the best strawweight outside of Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She fought Joanna the first time. I thought Claudia beat her the first time, but not important right now. It's irrelevant. But it was a very close fight. But I had Claudia winning that fight, and she lost a very close decision. But then the second time, it was pretty clear cut that Joanna won when they fought for the title. So it was always going to be very hard for her to get a third crack at Joanna. But now with Rose Namajunas as champion, it makes things interesting. She did lose to Jessica Andrade. Pretty dominant win for Jessica. Claudia beat Courtney Casey, Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Those were two very solid wins, and she lost to Jessica Andrade. Regardless, I believe Jessica Andrade is next. But for Claudia, I think this is a good fight. This is a perfect next step, and for Carla, I believe that's a perfect next step as well. So matchmaking-wise, I think the fight makes perfect sense. Finally, to round off the prelims, we've got Alistair Overeem and Curtis Blades. The fight that was in the pay-per-view portion got moved down to prelims. A lot of people were surprised. Obviously, Overeem is a very big name in the sport. A lot of people weren't happy. But doesn't really matter at this point. I mean, at least on FS1, everybody could watch you, right? You want to be on pay-per-view, but not everybody buys the pay-per-view. So FS1, I guess everybody gets to see it. But yeah, I mean, they got moved down to the prelim. It's such a good card. I mean, a lot of people shouldn't be where they are on the card spot-wise. A lot of people you could shuffle around. So, I mean, I guess for the fans, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I mean, Curtis Blades on a roll. This is his chance to catapult himself into title contention. His last loss came against Francis Ngannou, and that was like a doctor stoppage, I believe. So Curtis Blades has really been putting the work in. He's got phenomenal wrestling. So that's where I expect the fight with Overeem to go, or where he's going to want to take it. And for Alistair Overeem, I mean, he's had a couple of rough losses, but more to gain for Curtis Blades for sure. But Overeem, in my opinion, is probably the most well-rounded striker in the heavyweight division. It's just his chin hasn't been able to hold up. He's kind of suffered a lot of knockout losses in his career. He's fought kickboxing and then transitioned over to MMA. I mean, this guy has fought so many times all over the world. He's got a ton of experience. So it won't be easy by any means for Curtis Blades. But, he's coming off of the knockout loss to Francis Ngannou. That was 6-month layoff. That will be a 6-month layoff. But Overeem looked like he was climbing his way back. I mean, he had the win over Mark Hunt. He had the win over Fabricio Verdum. And then he encountered Francis Ngannou. So he was trying to climb his way back up to Stipe. Didn't work out for him. But a win over a guy like Curtis Blades, a surging Curtis Blades, will do good for Overeem. I mean, he's pretty high in the rankings anyway, but it'll do good for him to kind of solidify his position. Because like I said, you never know. The title could change hands. I mean, what happens if Daniel Cormier becomes champion? It's kind of like the whole division gets a clean slate, right? Because Cormier's had a couple of fights in the heavyweight division of the UFC, but a lot of guys haven't fought him yet. And a lot of guys will want to fight him. And Overeem has name value at the end of the day. He has name value for sure. And so he can get, when you have name value like Overeem, you can get big fights. But Curtis Blades, he's got his hands full with Curtis Blades. I mean, Curtis is on a 5-fight win streak. One of his fights were overturned because of marijuana, but that's BS in my opinion. That shouldn't be overturned. But five-fight win streak. He's looked good. He looked very good against Mark Hunt. He did get hurt a little bit in the striking, but got it back to the ground and just dominated. So, love the fight. I mean, this is a big showcase fight for Curtis Blades. He has the win over Mark Hunt, which is the win over the big name. Overeem's another big name. He's a fresh face for the division. So, definitely a big fight for him. Big fight for Overeem. You never want to suffer back-to-back losses in MMA or in the UFC. So that's a way for him to kind of get momentum back, the momentum he had before fighting Ngannou. Moving on to the main card, the pay-per-view portion. CM Punk, Mike Jackson. Obviously a fight that has angered a lot of people. They don't want to see it on pay-per-view, but come on. You guys all know why that's on pay-per-view. It's not rocket science. CM Punk will draw. Everyone's curious to see what he's going to do, because obviously in his debut we didn't get to see anything. Mickey Gall took him down, beat him up, choked him out. Very fast. We didn't even get to see a single punch thrown by him. He attempted one. Mickey ducked and took him down. But we didn't get to see anything from him. So, of course, there's intrigue to see what he's going to do. Former pro wrestling star, very popular, millions of followers. He's not just drawing the MMA crowd. He's drawing the WWE crowd. He's drawing all kinds of people. Whether you want to see him lose, whether you want to see him win, he's got name value. This is entertainment at the end of the day. The UFC, there's a lot to do with entertainment recently, and CM Punk has that name value. He's fighting in his hometown of Chicago. There's no way he's not on the main card. Are you kidding me? UFC 225 in Chicago and you want CM Punk to be in the prelims? I'm not saying I get it, of course. He's not done anything in MMA yet. I get it, of course. But he's got the name. He's got the name and people are going to tune in. And that's why he's there. Mike Jackson's a good opponent for him. I feel like Mickey Gall was too experienced and too talented for him. And yeah, we haven't seen or heard anything from CM Punk since UFC 203, so it'll be interesting. I mean, he's training at Rufus Sport. That's a great gym. Great coach in Duke Rufus. He's got great training partners, Anthony Pettis, Sergio Pettis, Bilal Muhammad. He's got so many great guys to work with at Rufus Sport. So and all the guys there have been saying that he's been putting the work in and he's been improving a lot. So I mean, are you not curious to see what he's gonna look like? I do believe this may be his last shot, at least in the UFC. I'm sure Bellator would love to scoop him up, but we'll see what he looks like. I believe it all depends on what he looks like and what he wants to do. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I was curious to see what he'd look like. Moving on, Andrei Arlovski and Tai Tuivasa. Arlovski he's had his ups and downs, of course. I believe, he's taken a lot of damage lately in his career. I honestly thought he was going to step away. But again, it's one of those things where you can't tell somebody to walk away unless they're 100% convinced. You don't want to see a guy take too much damage either. I mean, he's taken a ton of damage, Arlovski has, and you're putting him against a killer in Tuivasa. It's almost like you're setting him up to fail. That's just my opinion. I mean, Tuivasa is that guy that they want to build in the heavyweight division. He's super young. How old is he? 24? That's like the equivalent of being 15 in any other division because the heavyweight division's got so many older guys. So for Tai Tuivasa to be 24, I believe, in the heavyweight division, literally the equivalent of being 15 in like any other division. He's a baby. And he's fun. He's a cool guy. He always doing his shoeies. He's Aussie. He's got the whole of Australia and kind of New Zealand behind him. Knockout power. I just believe that this is a fight giving Tuivasa a name value. Giving Tuivasa, a name opponent in Arlovski. Kind of what they did with Francis Ngannou. Just trying to use him as a launching pad. For Arlovski, does that anger him? Does he care? I don't know. I mean, he lost 5 fights in a row, did Andrei Arlovski. Then he's won his last 2. Didn't look that... Definitely fought more cautiously, for sure, against Albini and then Stefan Struve. So you'd think rankings-wise and all that, it makes sense. But I just believe, this is I don't know, this is the easiest way for Tuivasa to climb to the top 5. And that's no disrespect to Arlovski. He's an absolute legend. And if he pulls this off, what are the odds for this fight? I'd be interested to find out. But I'm pretty sure Tuivasa is going to be a heavy, heavy, heavy favorite. And we all know why. Not because Arlovski can't fight. He can definitely fight. But I just believe his chin. He's taken way too much damage. I just believe that it's just a perfect stylistic fight for Tai Tuivasa. But we'll see. Tuivasa is young. He's exciting. He's what the heavyweight division needs right now. And this is his opportunity. He beats Andrei Arlovski. He's going to get a win over that big name opponent. A lot of people will know who he is. That's the point. It's kind of like to introduce him. He's 25, Tai Tuivasa. And he's got a kickboxing background. Very fun. Very athletic. Doesn't look like it, but he's super athletic, Tai Tuivasa. So that's going to be a good fight. And he's got a high position on the pay-per-view as well, Arlovski and Tuivasa. So you could tell that they're pushing. I mean, so many fights that could have been on that main card. Lamas Bektic, Gedalia Esparza, Overeem Blades. Benavidez Pettis. They didn't even think of moving Arlovski Tuivasa. They kept that. They shuffled. It was Holly Holm and Megan Anderson that took the place of Overeem and Blades. It could have taken the spot of Tuivasa and Arlovski, but that shows you that they're high on Tuivasa and they want him on that pay-per-view portion. Moving on to Holly Holm and Megan Anderson. Holly Holm moving up and down, bantamweight, featherweight. I believe Holly Holm at this point in her career is just looking for the big fights. And I don't blame her. Because she draws. I mean, Holly Holm draws. After beating Ronda, kind of everything changed. And even though she lost 3 in a row, she's got that name value now. And she's very likable and she's got a great fight style. So I believe for Holly Holm, like I'm not gonna answer for her, but I believe the motivation. Of course, she wants to get that belt back, whether it being the bantamweight or she wants to go after the featherweight. But you have to remember, she gave Chris Cyborg her toughest fight. She went 5 rounds with Chris Cyborg. That's not easy to do. She's got a boxing background, kickboxing background, but this is a fight a lot of people are interested in. I mean, it got bumped up to the pay-per-view portion, and Megan Anderson, a lot of people expected her to make her debut against Cyborg. That was going to happen. A lot of issues, and I don't know what. And now she ends up with Holly Holm. A lot of people don't like that because they feel like it may eliminate a potential opponent for Cyborg. But I feel like I don't mind. I mean, you get a win over Holly. I feel like it's a good test and good confidence builder into going to a Chris Cyborg fight. Making your debut against Cyborg is not exactly the easiest thing in the world. Although Megan's confident, she's ready to go. She'd want to fight Cyborg right away. But there's no harm in letting her fight Holly first. A talented fighter, former champion, someone with a big name. It would just build up the Cyborg fight that much more, in my opinion. So, yeah. I mean, Holly Holm lost 4 of her last 5 after being undefeated. Lost to Misha, Valentina Shevchenko, Jermaine Durandamy for the featherweight title, knocks out Betch Correia, and then loses to Chris Cyborg. So a lot to lose for Holly Holm as well. But with Holly, I feel like 35, 45, I think she's just chasing the big fights, and why not? It's not such a bad position to be in. Moving on, interim welterweight title fight, Rafael dos Anjos, Colby Covington. Very intrigued by this fight. It's obviously Covington being a very controversial character has caused a lot of issues and stirred the pot and whatnot. Rafael dos Anjos looking great since moving up to welterweight. Wins over Tarek Saffiedine. Quick finish of Neil Magny. Went to war with Robbie Lawler. And then you got Covington, who's coming off of a win against Damian Maia. Pushed the pressure. A lot of people criticize Covington for getting tagged up by Maia, but I thought he showed a lot of toughness, bit down on his mouthpiece and just kind of out-cardioed and out-wrestled and out-toughed, if that's even a word, Damian Maia, and he just did what he had to do to win the fight. I wasn't mad with his approach. It was more entertaining than the Woodley fight, I believe. He did take some damage, but he didn't really have much to fear with Maia's striking. He did get cut up, but I don't believe that he was fearing any potential one-punch knockout. I do believe he approaches the Dos Anjos fight a little differently. Obviously, Dos Anjos is the far superior striker to Damian Maia, and I do believe has a striking edge over Colby Covington. So with Covington, I do expect him rather to push forward and try to pressure Dos Anjos. He wants to go in there and break Dos Anjos. He wants to put a pace on Dos Anjos that he believes Dos Anjos won't be able to handle. Push the pace. He'll eat some punches. He'll take some damage. Stack him against the cage. Go for takedowns. Try once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Dos Anjos can wrestle, of course. Tremendous grappler. Great jiu-jitsu. So it'll be interesting to see if Covington is able. It's 5 rounds. That's another interesting thing. And Dos Anjos has shown us that he can go 5 rounds easy. He's done it against Anthony Pettis. Just did it against Robbie Lawler. He doesn't show a tendency to slow down either, Dos Anjos. A lot of people talk about Dos Anjos' loss to Khabib, but that was so long ago. And I believe Colby's a very good wrestler as well, but I just believe Khabib's grappling is on another level. And Khabib was able to take Dos Anjos down with ease, but Covington's a confident guy. If he stands on the outside and then tries to get into a technical battle with RDA, I believe RDA wins that all day. I do believe he's going to be pushing the pace in RDA's face. Punches, kicks, trying to stack him against the cage and take him down. Will he succeed? That'll be interesting. Will he exert too much energy trying to do it? That'll be interesting too. So I see more ways for RDA to win this fight, but at the same time, I believe that Colby's tougher than people give him credit for. I think that he's going to try to push a crazy pace, and yeah, we'll see if RDA can take it. I do believe RDA can take it, but it'll be interesting. Colby doesn't believe he can, which will make things interesting. For RDA, if you stand on the outside and try to engage in a technical battle, I think he wins that fight. I do believe he's the more technical fighter, but it'll be interesting. How do you react to somebody in your face? Because RDA pushes the pace usually. So if Colby is first, if Colby controls the octagon and stacks RDA against Cage, how does he respond to that? Who's going to go first? Definitely a very interesting fight. And it's for the interim welterweight title as well, so I know the interim title for a lot of people is a lot of crap, but still, it's a glorified number one contender, you could say. And you know if Covington wins this fight, just wait and see his post-fight interview if he wins this fight. He'll be all over Woodley. We'll see. Finally, the main event, Whittaker Romero 2. Loved the fight. Loved the matchup the first time. Didn't really quite go the way I expected it to the first one. I mean, Robert Whittaker is so tough. Romero kind of burnt himself out trying to take Robert down. Whittaker's got such good takedown defense. It's crazy. And Romero was still able to take him down. But he exerted a lot of energy trying to do it. And he hurt Robert. Robert had a knee injury coming into the fight, an MCL injury. And I don't know if Romero knew about it. Maybe he did. But he kind of went right away at it and kind of stomped it and all that. And Whittaker couldn't really stand. And he still managed to fend off the takedowns and outstrike Romero for the last 3 rounds. Remarkable. He was down 2-0 with a bad knee. That's crazy. So it'll be interesting to see Romero's approach. I don't think he's going to exert so much energy trying to take Robert down. Rather be a bit more opportunistic and unpredictable with the takedowns. Because he can get Whittaker down to the ground, even though Whittaker's got great takedown defense. But I feel like he telegraphed it a little bit in the first fight, and he exerted way too much energy trying to get him down. Whittaker, I believe, is the more active striker. But we see Romero a lot of times holding back. We saw it in the Weidman fight. We saw it in the Rockhold fight. He kind of takes his time trying to dissect his opponent. He succeeded more in those fights. Didn't burn himself out. Kind of waited for the right opportunity. He's so explosive. He's so explosive. He just, bam, with the knee, the flying knee with Weidman, the massive left with Luke Rockhold. Just all of a sudden, bam, like you just sleep for a second, he'll make you pay. So I expect a more calculated and unpredictable Romero rather than his approach the first time round, just so he can keep his cardio for all 5 rounds and be opportunistic. For Robert Whittaker, obviously avoid in and out is the key for Robert Whittaker. He's always devastating with the striking, so throw whether it's the kicks. He's going to have to be careful, of course, with the kicks because of Romero's wrestling, but in and out for Robert Whittaker, be the more active striker and avoid kind of the big shots from Romero and try to fend off the takedown. So for Whittaker, he's got a lot of speed. I believe Romero's is more explosive, but Whittaker's very fast, in and out, mixing up with his striking. He's very elusive as well. He's very solid defensively. So yeah, I see if Whittaker can get Romero frustrated and tired, I do believe he can get him out of there late. And at the same time, I do see Romero possibly just bam out of nowhere catching Whittaker. It can go both ways. It can go all ways. It could go via decision. I do believe decision favors Whittaker more. I just believe if it goes all 5 rounds, it'll either probably be Whittaker outstriking him if he doesn't get caught. I don't see Romero being able to take him down for 5 full rounds and controlling him. Whittaker is just too good with his takedown defense, and He's one of those guys that right away pops right back up, doesn't even want to be on his back for a second. And that's key in the fight with Yoel Romero. All right, there we have it. That is the UFC 225 preview. Pretty much covered all the fights, and now it's time to answer all your questions. So let's get to it.